it's one of the things that I would say for me, having been raised by my parents. If you know my mom, she is very straightforward. In my household, uh, I would say there was little to no Guyanese slang. If anything else, my mom would tell me it's like you're speaking proper English, and she would do it with like a very regal, like Westinian British accent.
Yeah.
Uh, and I would say at times it's when I was at school, I got made fun of because I wasn't code switching. And it's like this is coming from the reality that it's like I grew up in a multicultural environment. It's like in elementary school, like probably maybe two or three other black guys, and then in high school, I was the only black guy that wasn't on the basketball team. Though I'm saying that I'm doing a disservice to at least two other guys. Uh, but it was one of those things that people, I wouldn't call them my friends, but people that I hung out with, they would continually taunt because they'd be like, yo, I'm more black than you are. Because A, I'm either not wearing the brands that have been associated with hip hop, or
Go
it's
there,
one of
Tim.
those
Go there.
things that it's like I'm not I'm not dropping the N word with them, and I'm not gonna talk like that. It's like this isn't the proper way to do it, and it's one of those things along the lines of what Andrew was getting at. It's this whole thing of letting people know that it's like to be black isn't to be some stereotype. I'm not here to entertain you.
Yeah.
It's one of those things that when all else is said and done, my goal is to be able to show myself off, to represent myself in a way that is honoring and glorifying to God. And it's something that it's like I'll find myself at times. There is a level of comfort that I will say when I am around people of either like minds or cultures or in a lot of situations that I've been privileged to be a part of, skin tones. But then it's also one of those things that I've also experienced the inverse, where I remember one time I went to Buffalo and we were at the Walden Galleria because that's the only reason you go for Buffalo unless you're
Hey.
Bills fans or
True.
something like
True.
that.
True.
And it was the oddest feeling. It's like I saw a group of like 15 black people, and it's like I can only now better understand what I felt, but there was a level of like, this is weird, this is uncomfortable, because I was left wondering, will they accept me
Mm,
if I meet them? Will I
talk
be
that.
black enough for them?
Wow.
That's really good.
I felt
Mm.
that here.
That's real. That's real black for Buffalo. Very black.
Yeah.
No, that's interesting.
And it was one of those things that in that moment, the whole idea of code switching, uh, especially if it is intentional, uh, can become very. It does a disservice to us as a people, regardless of where we're from, because it's one of those things that yes, we want to be able to put our best foot forward and to showcase uh, the wonders of who we are and what we can bring to the table. But then it's one of those things that we don't want to feel like we have to put on a face to be accepted. And that is definitely something that I myself experienced growing up. And it's the reality was, especially growing up, I felt more comfortable with in a multicultural dynamic where uh, there was one black person, and it's like there were Chinese, Indian, Asian, everything else. That felt more comfortable to me than to be in a group that wasn't family, that was all
Wow.
black.
That's wow.
Wow.
Wow, that's I'm guilty of code switching regularly. But I do it partially um because I have to sometimes. It's just the reality of the life I lead. Um
You're talking like you're a spy. No, I'm Jason Bourne out here on these streets.
This guy's part of the Treadstone program.
No, but in all
You better be
seriousness,
careful because he might get at y'all.
Treadstone project
Out there. He might get at y'all. God. We won't see you next week. When you wonder what happened
Don't
to
speak of it again.
Bard and Chase.
Yeah, seriously.
They brought it out for everybody to hear. Yo, that's Stefan, the part of Treadstone. He can't be saying
Don't worry,
out, y'all.
we can cut this from the video.
Let's just cut this out. This is how we
Treadstone
cut
was
out.
never mentioned.
It was never mentioned, y'all.
Either was Area 51, guys.
You didn't see
Area
the movie
51.
What Happened to Those Who Mentioned Treadstone? Y'all didn't see the movie?
What about Black Rap?
Yeah, listen,
Come on
don't
now.
come up. I know where all you guys sleep, eh?
You don't remember your name, so it doesn't matter.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Watson, go ahead, Watson. Go ahead,
It's
Watson.
interesting because I was just in doing some research. What they're finding is that not only are black people doing a lot of code switching, but white people do a lot of code switching too. I was reading that in an article and it made me think like why. And I think a part of it is what has been mentioned already is just the culture. You know, you have to act a certain way, you gotta look a certain way, you gotta be a certain way.
Yeah.
And you know, like I said, I'm guilty of code switching at times, but it depends on the circles I'm in. You know, when I'm preaching a message, I'm very, you know, my language is more of the Queen's language, the Queen's English. When I'm around people that, you know, I may have gone to high school with or people I'm more casual with, I'm not going to use a lot of formal talk. We're gonna break it down, you know, just talk, you know, unformal. And I find that a lot of other people do the same thing. It's just interesting, like, you know, if you call somebody and you call from a private number, they answer all nice, and you're like, "Hey, it's me," and you're like, "Oh, okay, well, I don't need to talk like that anymore." So I've had that happen to me. It's interesting, and I find that people don't understand. I find that there are other people who, you know, from different cultures who don't understand why black people code switch. And it's trying to explain to them why we sometimes do that. And they still don't get it. And I have to stop getting angry at people because I have people that may go to my church, may not go to my church, who like to make fun of me when they're around and I, you know, I may or may not code switch and they can't understand it. And then for me to try to explain the why it's done, you know, hey, listen, you don't understand why this happens this way. It's not something for you to mock. It's actually something for you to try to more so try to understand why we feel that we have to do this, right? Like why we feel that, you know, we have to talk a certain way or why we don't portray ourselves the same way all the time. I think that's a part of the narrative of why code switching happens. And I find that, you know, we tend to find ourselves in these conversations and we don't have these or we tend to find ourselves in these situations without having the conversations behind it and what's actually behind it and, you know, why this happens and why it's a rising statistic, actually, why people feel that they have to do that in our culture and in our society. So I think it's also it's our society sort of impacts why code switching is necessary. It's also the projection of how black people are portrayed, and I think Bart said it earlier, portrayed in the movie. This is how we're supposed to talk. And I get mad. I haven't watched BET in years, but I get mad at people who've only seen black people on BET or who've only seen black people in like World Star Hip Hop or on, you know, the poppin' Instagram accounts. Like I and that's their only sort of portrayal of black people, which is kind of sad, right? Is black people in these really more entertaining moments as opposed to the black guy who's a lawyer, right? The black guy who's, you know, who's a preacher, right? Like these arenas that people don't see them and they only see, you know, black people in those instances. So I think that also plays a role in it as well. Jones, I see you there. What do you got to say?
You're muted, bro.
I'm going to jump in quickly and then bounce out. But I think either Kareem or Chris might have said it. But by us switching, what we're saying is that there is a way to talk black and there's a way to talk white. And by you saying I have to code switch and talk differently, then we're saying there's a white way to talk or a different color way to talk and a black way to talk. And that fits into the stereotypes that we're trying to break. And so
Right.
we got
Yeah, okay.
that's why I'm saying we gotta try our best to stop the code switching, because if you're loud, be loud. Sure, there's sometimes you gotta be quiet. That's just part of life. But to people say they know who I am because of my laugh, the loud laugh. We know that Jonesy's in the thing because of the loud laugh. I'm not gonna change that just because I'm with Filipinos or white people or whatever.
Right.
We got to be careful, because by us switching, then we're fitting into the stereotype. And Bart said something about like the show Blackish and stuff like that. But even in the show Blackish, the dad is talking and acting ghetto.
Yes.
Right.
And so the stereotype is still fit in there by what
He's
we're
just a
supposed
rich
to be.
ghetto.
But I'll let Bart speak.
Yeah, and this is a great segue. Thank you, Andrew, for that. I think it would be like, remiss if I didn't say, like, of course, it's the black people in the scenario who have to manage expectations of themselves. And I think it comes down to self-identity more than anything else. Because society pins, again, like I said, like, there's a neutral zone, which just happens to be white because of the world that we live in North America. Because any other culture that is not white is pinned less than the neutral zone, then everybody code switches to elevate to be at least something that is in the neutral zone.
Yep.
So our society already pins us less than. And I know sometimes it is not conscious, it's by construct. And what ends up happening is black people do it to themselves. So black people will then make fun of other black people for saying, oh, you're catering to the white man now.
Mm-hmm.
So you should stay like us. So look, this is our this is quote unquote our culture is here. And now you think that you're better than us to elevate, to come up to this place of here. So how dare you now call yourself black or continue to call yourself black if you are going to go and portray and submit yourself to that culture?
Crab in the bucket.
So what ends up happening is people who are white have a hard time understanding that just by us being a different color, we are viewed differently by society in general. That idea is hard to grasp. That I say, no, I know sometimes you may get a harder time, but I say, no, the harder time comes because not what they see in us, but what they think they understand about us. The worst part about racism is discrimination, when you have broad sweeping ideas about a group of people. So when people believe that, oh, because I saw such and such film, because I saw She's Gotta Have It, and that, you know what I mean? Like, because I saw what Wesley Snipes did in this movie, they then believe they understand what this culture is, and we get pigeonholed. Right. Black people ourselves, I feel like I'm talking like Dr. Umar Johnson, but black people, with my fingers, but black people ourselves, we put ourselves in the same thing. We say, well, I see that movie, and I saw how Ice Cube was portrayed, and I saw this movie about Boys in the Hood, and I see how Straight Outta Compton was portrayed, and so if I want to be a real one, then I also, too, have to stay true to the culture and stay true to the roots. The only difference is white people don't see the same thing that we see. So meaning that our experiences are just different and don't cross paths. And I believe exactly what Andrew is saying. We have to break our own chains. We have to stop the culture switching, the code switching, and the changing of our language and how we speak, so that we free the next generation. I don't want my son to talk the way I spoke in high school, because I spoke about the way I spoke in high school because I watched Boys in the Hood, and because I watched those type of movies that showed me what it was like to be cool, because of the black boyfriend that the daughter in Sopranos had, you know what I mean, when I was like in grade 9. Those are the things that change you as a person, because you're like, yo, that's what's up. And then you start to portray that, and then it gets amplified by the people that you're around, because they say, yeah, that's what's up. And in turn, when reality is, if you were to ask me, even back then, would you want your son to talk like this, your future son to talk the same way or behave the same way that you're talking? The answer is no. So why are you behaving this way? We need stronger personalities, people of color, all different shades, especially men to go out there and portray what it needs to be like. And there is a whole other side for women in this as well, in terms of how a black woman is portrayed and what beauty is and all that different type of stuff. But for this conversation, it starts at your house. How do I want my son to behave? I don't want him to have to think about whether or not he's acting black enough or he's acting white enough. In fact, when they were smaller, like a year and a half ago, my son said one year, "Yo, Daddy, you and me and Victory, we're black, Mommy's white." And then even when he was younger, before that, he's like, "Yeah, Daddy, you're black, me, Mommy, Victory, we're white." Like the way he understands his culture is not based on just what he sees on TV or what he sees his dad do. He understands his culture based on the context. And I want to provide him the opportunity to see the context with a greater range so that he can see exactly where he fits in. But you can't get there if you don't know who you are. So we have to amplify what we see in our children. We have to amplify what we see in the next generation. And for those of us who are youth and young adult pastors, so that they can see who you are is determined by God before you were even born. And when you walk inside of that, you don't have to cater to any of these things. And the amplification doesn't have to come from anywhere but God.
Come on now,
Pastor.
Come on now.
Okay.
Oh, let him know. Let him know. Let him know.
I'm about to get up.
All right.
Doing dance right now.
Jason does next. Jason got next. Jason got next.
So I like what Bart was saying, but even how we're talking about black culture is that, for instance, when I grew up in the States, I know a lot of people who grew up around pimps, who grew up around drug dealers, who grew up in the projects, which is, I mean, similar here, but to a whole nother extent. So the issue is that many of these people grew up in these type of environments where that's all they saw. Yep. Like, for instance, the drug dealer driving around with the best car and the booming system. So that was a part of the culture. And so I think the issue is sometimes the people pulling out away from that culture. And so even though they pull out, they still grew up in it. And even in some point when they have to go back, they still have to be accepted. So I'm not saying, which I agree, that even, for instance, for my son growing up, I don't mind him using some of the slang and so the other things, but as long as he makes sure that he knows who he is and how to act and conduct himself in certain environments, to me, that's fine. But some people, this is all they know. I know some people who have never left their country. I know some people who have never even left their state, who grew up in some impoverished neighborhood and some impoverished places. And so for some of them, and just their experience is all they know, and they've never been experienced. Some of them have never seen wealthy homes or been on the best side of town. And see, I think these are some of the issues that many of our people face. And it's important, obviously, for our roles as ministers, pastors, worship leaders, whatever, et cetera, that we're able to bring these people out of these type of situations. But that's a whole other topic.
No, I think it's valuable for us to remember, like, we get to be mentors. Yeah. Like, which is crazy. Like, we, even in this conversation, we get to be mentors to some 15-year-old or 16-year-old youth or some young adult who's had this conversation that we're having in their minds, and they're thinking, "Oh man, I'm crazy," and they get to hear 10 grown men say, like, "No, like, this isn't something that I only went through when I was 15, 16. This is something that I walk through right now too." And we get to be mentors. So for that one person, I remember there's a scene in Calvin's favorite show, The Wire, in season 4, where these kids who only lived in Baltimore, they get taken to the really expensive restaurant, and they don't know how to be. And the teacher thinks this teacher, he's a Caucasian guy, he thinks he's doing such a great thing for them. He's thinking, "Oh, you won this project, I'm going to take you to this restaurant." And the kids are like, "We just want to go home," because it was so far out from what they were used to. I wonder what it would have been like if that teacher said, we're going to go again, and 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 allow them to for it to be normalized. Like, you can actually have this. This isn't just a surprise. It's something that you can actually have. And to remind our own children, the people that we get to be around, that the sky is the limit for them, that you can be yourself, and there's moments where I know that if I'm speaking in an all white room, if I drop a Toronto man's language, it's an easy laugh right away. It's an easy in. And I already know that right away. It's like watching Will Smith on The Fresh Prince and knowing that he'll do a certain thing because he knows it's an automatic laugh. It's all these sort of, is that code switching, or is that just being a really smart communicator? There's certain moments where you know that in a certain room, you can say a certain thing and it moves the needle this way. Is that code switching, or is that manipulating room? I don't know. What I do know is that it's healthy for us to have these sort of conversations and to be comfortable in our own skin, and also be comfortable to hear one another's stories as well. Like, I'm listening to Tim talk and I'm like, oh man, like, I know I've walked through that. And then I've actually watched Tim walk through that when he was a teenager. You know what I'm saying? To listen to O'Shea's story or to Calvin's, or to even hear mine out loud. It's valuable for us to be willing to have these tough conversations, and to allow ourselves the room for people who are going to watch us and disagree. And I'll quote Andrew: if you like it, great. If you don't like it, good.
Great.
This has been a really good conversation. We got to have more of these, like in the
just
days,
quick
weeks
Chase,
to come.
I would love to say, if anybody have any comments about code switching, they should put it in the comments. Like, we should further the conversation.
Yeah. Like it doesn't. The conversation doesn't end, and we're 10 people. Bart, you said it, man. Like, if we think being a black man is hard, being a black woman, that's a whole conversation in and of itself. So if you got comments, if you got thoughts, if you have ideas, even disagreements, leave them in the comments at the end of this clip. Hosky, turn it back over to you.
Well, I know Reem had one last comment and stuff. So Reem, if you want to
chime it in
real quick.
The thing I would like to say is it's in regards to, I agree with what Jonesy is saying. You even heard me say that I feel like we need to change the conversation from what's black to what's white. It's just what's professional versus what's ghetto and whatnot. But there is a side of it where we do need to be we need to recognize the importance or the need sometimes that we do need to code switch. I would say from experience that there's been times where because of what I grew up on, I felt like, culturally speaking, I had to be real to myself. And to be honest, that actually did a disservice to me and to those that are coming behind me and those that are around me. And there is a need sometimes for a thing. But but what even plays into that when we talk about code switching that we got to think about, even, and this may be a controversial statement, but my thing is this: I feel like as for the culture per se, if we're going to say the culture, we may not necessarily be physically enslaved, but we've allowed society and system to mentally enslave us. And so we think of these different things as saying, and Jason even talked about, like, you've grown up and all you've seen was the ones that were bigged up were the ones that had, the drug dealers that had all the money and all that. And so you thought that that's how you needed to be or whatever, or the guy that was down, or somebody mentioned Boys in the Hood and all that. And so you're growing up in that culture. That's what you perceive that's success. And a lot of that I think is ingrained in us intentionally. What we see in media, it's been talked about, Blackish and whatnot. What we see in media and movies and all that is what's portrayed as quote unquote black. I feel like that's done intentionally. Like, I actually strongly believe that that's done intentionally to mentally enslave us, to keep us in this space where we resonate with acting a certain way and saying that that's who we're supposed to be. And if we do anything outside of that, then we're not being true to ourselves, and that we need to quote unquote sell out if we want to go up, or if we want to be real and true to ourselves, we need to continue to act how things in society and media is portrayed. And so code switching happens, and sometimes it's because we've allowed what's been put out as what is for success. We've allowed that to be to say that we need to switch to be that to be successful, but really what it is, we got to keep on being professional. That's the last thing that I want to say. Sorry.
100%.
It's good, man.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Thanks, man. And I mean, there's this conversation is far from over. You know, this whole idea, it goes deep, man. These roots go deep. And we want to have that we want to further have that conversation. So as Bart was saying earlier, we want to see what you guys are seeing as well in the comments. If you can comment below, we would love that. I'm gonna close this off like my boy Stephen A. when he closes off ESPN on YouTube. Thanks for watching. Thanks for watching the podcast.
Thanks for watching Sports and Entertainment. If you like
highlights, clips, for more highlights, clips, and discussion, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Cut.
Stay off.
See you later.
The weed.
Stephen A. is the best sportscaster.
That's how we're
right
starting.
now.
That's where we're stopping right there. The episode.
Yeah.
The weed. All right.